Texas A&M is ranked too high in the coaches and in the AP poll. They just are ranked too high. Overrated. A&M hasn't done anything. What has Jimbo done since he's gotten to A&M? If you throw out the COVID year, Jimbo hasn't done anything. Overrated coach, overrated program. Get them out of the top 10. That's all I hear. That's all I see. And maybe it's me looking through my Aggie lens, but it seems every time a poll gets posted, whether it's a retweet, a repost, a personal poll, an official poll, I think the most commented gripe about these polls is that Texas A&M is ranked too high. It's interesting. I want to know why people think this. I wish I could talk to these. I think it's mostly just Twitter fans, or keyboard fans, I should say. A few talking heads have mentioned it. I mean, Tim Brando, Joel Klatt, a couple of guys have said things about A&M. But I would say the masses and the media acknowledge A&M's deserved spot as a top 10 program. So then why are all these commenters saying overrated? I'm not sure. What does a poll even mean at this point in the season? Not much. It's a lay of the land, but it's a talking point is the main thing. It's a talking point. It's a matchmaking tool for the early season games like the Notre Dame, Ohio State game. You put Notre Dame at rank 5, makes that game that much juicier. So it's not really that important what you're ranked to start the year and what the people are saying at the beginning of the year. It doesn't matter. But as an Aggie, I still feel the need and the drive to address it. So let's do that. First and foremost, why this is the narrative amongst many fans is recency bias. A&M had a bad year last year. I don't think there's any getting around that. I mean, we have reasons for it, but it was a subpar year. I personally thought that junior class was going to do big things last year. I thought that DeMarvin Leal, Jalen Wademeyer, Isaiah Spiller, Kenyon Green class was going to at least make another New Year's Six game, make their second one, but at best make the playoff. I had thought it was building up to that. Turned out that there were some issues with the team. And real quickly, we'll go over that. Quarterback goes down game 1. Zach Calzada was not it. He was not the guy to carry the team past these next deficiencies that I'm about to speak about. First of all, being an inexperienced offensive line. You replace 4 veteran starters. And even though you bring back Kenyon Green, when you lose that much continuity on the O-line, you're at least going to have an early season struggle to get that thing up to speed. And we saw that. I would say Calzada, the offensive line, and subpar receiver play were responsible for those first 2 losses, and probably the losses later in the year as well. But it's very salient to see in that Arkansas and Mississippi State game that the passing game was deficient, and that hurt everything. So, yeah. Receivers, we lost Chase Lane, Caleb Chapman, the only deep threat, really, besides Damon Demas, who ended up not being ready. Lost him to injury early in the year. And talk about Demas, I don't like to rag on college players, but he had 2 tip drill drops that went for interceptions in games that A&M lost. Pretty big deal when that happens in a close game. Because you talk about a swing in a game. If A&M capitalizes on those drives where he should have caught those balls, because he got his hands on those balls, that's a 14-point swing potentially. So when you're in a close game and you're dropping balls that when they touch your hand you should catch them, that's a kiss of death right there. So that's the kind of receiver A&M was playing. Jalen Preston emerged later in the year, but there was really no consistency in there, especially with Jalen Wademeyer having a down year. He was still probably the most effective receiver, but he had a down year. A lot of drop balls, a lot of just subpar play from him that we did not expect. Passing game was an absolute mess. And maybe the indictment on Jimbo or whatever was that he didn't have a second quarterback, because he clearly missed on Calzada, because Calzada's not even in the rotation at Auburn. He's not a starter. He's not even the backup as of right now. He's third string at Auburn. Eli Stowers, for whatever reason, was a miss. We don't know much about that. And he had Haynes King. And we'll see what Haynes King really is. He looked pretty good in his time that he has played for A&M, whether it was in mop-up duty or versus Kent State. But if the indictment is he only had one quarterback, that is what it is. He only had one quarterback last year. And Calzada was not the guy to pull A&M out of those other deficiencies. Maybe you get an elite quarterback and you can get past that offensive line play. You can throw some receivers open. You can be consistent. Didn't happen. It was another 8-4 year. A&M had a disappointing season. But how quickly they forget what happened the year before. The 2020 year. It's like people want to erase history. It's like people want to say, well, besides the COVID year, A&M hasn't done anything. As if A&M was the only team that had to play through COVID. As if A&M was the only team that had to do the extra precautions, sit players down, do all that stuff. 8-1 through an SEC slate, New Year's 6 win. It's like it just gets discredited. I mean, do we even give Bama the championship that year, or do we take that one away too? What do we do? I think it was a great season. A lot of things came together, and it was Jimbo's signature season so far. And it was an even playing field because everybody had to deal with COVID. Everybody had players out. Everybody had to play against a weird schedule. So to discredit that, I think is stupid. People do it, and people quickly forget about that season. They're very quick to forget that season. And we ain't done yet. But 2019, record-wise, was a bad season. But if you look at that team, and I know I'm just railing off excuses, I'm coming to a point here, I promise. 2019, A&M played a historically difficult schedule. At Clemson, played Alabama, of course, drew Georgia that year. Also, the greatest LSU team of all time, a historic team. The game they should have won was home versus number 14, ranked 14 Auburn. But with the young defense, I think A&M started maybe one senior on that team besides the punter. That defense could not get over the eye violation offense that Gus Malzahn liked to run, and that threw him off. And A&M couldn't get things going on offense. All the playmakers were young that year. It was Spiller as a freshman, Weidemeyer as a freshman, Anais Smith as a freshman, a couple of other guys, but your main playmakers were all super young that year, and you drew a schedule like that, 5-loss season, worse than 8-4. So you actually can't even get it right. But it was not a year that A&M was ever going to overcome. But the year before that, Jimbo overachieved because Sumlin left the A&M program not in disarray, but definitely not in a position to seriously make some noise in the SEC. In that year, A&M beat a good Kentucky team. They beat a good LSU team, 7 overtime, and they won their bowl game. 9-4. Yes, 8-4 U, but A&M had no business being that good that year, and they did. A little thing called Jay Sternberger appeared out of nowhere and was the heart and soul of that team. Travion Williams went from a good running back to a great running back through Jimbo. So there's a lot to like about that season, but all people see is 8-4. And I get it. When you recruit like Texas A&M recruits, you want to see a better record. But it's more than just that. It's not just a straight climb to the top once you start recruiting well. It's not just success is just going to happen and it's going to compound every year in terms of record. That's never how it is unless you're Alabama. Dabo with Clemson. They wanted to fire Dabo for a certain amount of years before they went on that run. It's not always a straight ride to the top. It's not always win more games every year. You lost 4 last year, you better lose 3 this year, you better only lose 2 the next year, and you better only lose 1 the next year. I feel like that's what's expected out of Texas A&M. I will give you that last year. That was a bad year from Texas A&M. There were some circumstances that couldn't be overcome within that calendar year, and it sucked. The 2021 year sucked. It was painful. But to act like A&M is not on an upward trajectory despite those records is stupid. It's just not right because there's continuity in the coaching staff, and sure, coaches move on to higher roles. Mike Elko just went to become a head coach at Duke, but they bring in one of the best available in DJ Durkin. Everybody else has been consistent since Jimbo's been there. So there's continuity there. There's continuity in the message for the team. There's continuity in the personnel. And the culture is permeating the team. Oh, and the talent gets better every year. Which leads me to my next point. Another argument against Texas A&M, and for them to be overrated, is that number 1 recruiting class isn't ready to help this team out this year. Therefore, this team is several years away. I will give you this. A&M will be better next season and the season after that than they are this season. But they got some players that are ready to do some stuff right now, and they aren't part of that historic recruiting class. People act as if A&M just started recruiting at a high level, whereas when Jimbo has really been recruiting at a top 8 level since he got here. You talk about guys who have been waiting in the wings or have been getting minutes but haven't made a name for themselves yet. Guys like Edgerrin Cooper, McKinley Jackson, Isaiah Rakes. Shall I go on? Timnise Adelier, Fadil Diggs. That entire secondary is extremely underrated as well. I mean, you got guys, Antonio Johnson, Jalen Jones, Damani Richardson. You got some beasts in that secondary. And not to mention some guys that are waiting their turn, like Tariq Chappelle, who played all year last year, looked really good. Jordan Gilbert. And then you have that freshman class behind all of them. So yeah, maybe the depth is young, but it's not like this whole team is just relying on those freshmen to come up big on a down-by-down basis for A&M to win football games. Because I think when this season starts, you're going to be looking at maybe 2 starting true freshmen. And the rest are going to be seasoned SEC either veterans or guys that have been waiting in the wings playing against high-level SEC opponents in practice. Because you know how A&M recruits. They're playing against those guys every day in practice. So there are players that are ready to make noise now. And that's not I'm not saying A&M is going to go out and make the playoff, win the championship this year. But I'm saying there's a really good chance they're going to make some noise and that they're not going to go 8-4 this year. Let's bring up the AP poll and the coaches poll. Texas A&M is ranked 6 and 7 in these polls. I think there's several tiers. I think Alabama's in a tier of their own, but to simplify things, I think there are 3 clear tiers here to start off this top 10 or this top 15. You have Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. Clear top 3. No one will argue with you there. And then, and I'm going to throw some of my opinion in here too, but I think most would agree that Clemson, Michigan, Texas A&M, Utah are all clear tier 2 teams for this season. Let me tell you why. Clemson has everything you could ever need to compete for a championship. They just need quarterback play. When you're one piece away and you have a guy who has shown he has done it before, I believe you deserve the benefit of the doubt in starting at 4 or in the top 8. I believe that is earned, that is deserved with how they recruit, their track record, their coaching staff. I think it's there. Same goes for Michigan. They made the playoff last year. They lose some on defense. Their entire offense is back. But when you have done it before with the same coaching staff, when you have the players, I think you deserve a spot there. Utah brings their whole team back. Great season last year. Veteran team this year. And this is where I think you put schedule into rankings a little bit because Utah has a very manageable schedule. Very possible they can make it to the playoff with their schedule. Texas A&M. I mean, by talent, you have them and then like Clemson. Who else is recruiting at the chip that Texas A&M has? And that's just one piece of the puzzle. Coaching staff, national champion head coach, a coach that has won a New Year's Six game with this program. They're replacing or fixing every deficiency they had last year has been addressed. Quarterback, addressed. Offensive line, progressed. Receivers, addressed and progressed. Everything that you could want from a team that's going to contend, you'll find in those 4 teams. Clemson, Michigan, A&M, Utah. Now, if you want to throw someone else in there as like a wild card, and you want to put A&M at the bottom of that list, which would put them at 4, 5, 6, 7, I mean, you could throw a Baylor in there. You could throw, I might even throw an Arkansas in there, just because of what they bring back. The camp reports that the receivers are filling in for Treylon Burke really nicely. I think there's an argument for Arkansas there. That might be my bias showing. But there are very few teams that you could slot into that second tier clearly, in my opinion. OU, if they weren't on a first-year head coach, maybe I would say OU could go in there just because they have not stopped recruiting well. They produce year after year. They're a consistent playoff threat. They have their transfer quarterback that they always seem to capitalize on. But when you look at the second tier of teams, the teams that are right there on the cusp, and you don't put Texas A&M in, you are dead wrong. Yeah, that's all I wanted to mention today because I've seen it time and time again. And you know what? I have a YouTube channel. I'm going to address it because I want to. And it's preseason. What else are you going to talk about besides rankings that don't mean anything? So if you like this content, like, subscribe. My name is Drew. I'm an Aggie. I'll be doing this throughout the year and going forward. If you want more, jump on in and we'll do some more. Have a good one.